Jesus has another story for us today. The realm of God is like a farmer who sowed good seed in a field. But while everyone was sleeping, an enemy sowed weeds among the wheat. When the wheat comes up, the weeds appear as well. And the folks who work this field have questions. Where have all these weeds come from? And should we go and try to pick all of them out? But the farmer says no. In picking out the weeds, you would also uproot the wheat. Let it all grow, the farmer says, until the harvest. And then collect the weeds and burn them before gathering the wheat into the barn. This parable is no hypothetical example. It's something that happened all the time to those farming in that region. Folks would carefully prepare a field and then bring out good seed and sow it. And then right alongside the wheat would come up a pernicious weed, a weed known as darnel or cockle. This weed is particularly difficult to deal with for at least two reasons. First, it closely resembles wheat. As the two are growing, it is very difficult to tell them apart. It's only when the ears of the wheat grow fat and heavy and the head begins to droop over at harvest time that the wheat can be distinguished from the weed, which continues to stand straight up. But there's a bigger problem. Cockle is not harmless. It is often infected by a fungus that is potentially fatal when eaten. So if you don't separate it out from the wheat, you might be collecting poison to feed your people. All this means that the logic of the farmer in Jesus' parable is quite wise. It's only prudent to let both wheat and weed grow until the harvest, lest you pull up your precious wheat by mistake. But when harvest comes, it's best to be ruthless, collecting the weeds and burning them before they can harm anyone. But this still leaves us with a key question, which is, how does the advice apply to those of us who are not cultivating wheat? Welcome, Chris. So Lent is a season in our church year when we're encouraged to think about what is helpful and what is harmful in our lives. This work of discernment can be quite difficult, like distinguishing between the wheat and the weed that imitates it. Humans have a terrible track record when it comes to knowing what is good for us. Let me offer some extreme examples. Plenty of things that have been touted as healthy have turned out to be extremely dangerous, like bloodletting or cigarettes. And consider some of the things that have been purported to be right or good or even holy. Utterly evil things like slavery and segregation and the subjugation of women and colonization. I told you I was starting with extreme examples, right? And on the other hand, many things that have been called dangerous turn out not to be even remotely harmful, like jazz music, or rock music, or rap music, or whatever the young people are listening to these days, and whatever dance moves they use when they listen to it. Not at all harmful. Or allowing everyone to love who they love, and wear what they want to wear, and decide what name and what pronouns they wish to use. It doesn't hurt anyone. In fact, it saves lives. when our public debate is more concerned about the dangers of drag queen story hours at local libraries instead of gun control and poverty, we know that we've gotten awfully confused about the wheat and the weeds. And Jesus is right. This confusion is often cultivated intentionally for evil ends. We have trouble discerning what is potentially dangerous and what is nourishing, as a society and as individuals. And many things, unlike those examples I just gave, aren't exactly good or bad in and of themselves. It just depends how we're using them, how they impact our lives and the lives of others. And in that case, I think it's time for a biblical saying you might have heard: know them by their fruits, right? So just as the farmer watches the field, observing how the head of the wheat ripens when it's full and the heavy grains bend the head over while the weed does not, it's our job to observe which things, whether personal or political, lead to beautiful fruits and beautiful ends, and which become poisonous. And once we know, once we're able to tell which is which, the parable is clear. We should be ruthless. We need to bring the fire of prophetic words and prophetic action, a purifying, holy flame, to our own hearts and to our societies. Poison must be destroyed before it can further harm God's people and God's creation. So I encourage you to take this question with you today. What are the weeds that are growing in your life right now? Observe the state of the field of your heart. Consider simple things like how you spend your time each day and how you spend your money, your patterns of thought and action. Pay attention to yourself as closely as you would the things growing in a field. Do you have any habits that are harming you? Do you notice any evil seeds, seeds of apathy, or growing kernels of hurt or hate, or seedlings of greed or blame or distrust? What small action might you take to shift the balance of weeds and wheat growing in your field, to cultivate the best of what is growing there and discourage the rest? And how might we use then the wisdom we cultivate individually to help our larger society? Not by judging other people, because that is God's work, but by judging practices and observing outcomes. What is wheat and where are the weeds? No one deserves to be fed with poison that's pretending to be bread. Please pray with me. God, our farmer, we are full of weeds and wheat, and often it's so hard to tell the difference. Teach us to be patient, close, persistent observers of how the seeds in our heart grow and what fruits they bear and what is being cultivated all around us. Teach us to be discerning and brave and creative in how we collect and destroy what is poisonous to us, to our neighbors, and to your creation. Teach us to be intentional and generous in how we gather and share what is good. May all your world be fed with what will truly sustain us, while the fires of your justice burn the rest away. Amen.